Time for Ask the Mayor on KWBE, our Thursday program each week with Mayor Bob Morgan. Good morning, Mayor.
Good morning. How are you?
Good. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good.
Great.
Great weather, great morning.
Yep.
Enjoy the nice weather before we get to Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah, all the way through the middle of next week. Looks like it's going to kind of get back to summer. I mean, really hot summers.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Before we get into our program today, maybe just a quick thing about the weather. I don't know what it is about north and east Beatrice this year, but we had that kind of freakish hailstorm Friday. I think it was Friday afternoon. It kind of moved across there. And city have any damage from that at all that you know of? Yeah.
I think there was a little bit. I also think the service center had some hail. I don't know how much it affected some of the service vehicles. I think some of the employees' vehicles got hit a little bit, so that was too bad.
Yeah.
It was freakish. It really was. I remember I was out doing yard work, and I talked to the mailman and said, "Looks like we're going to have maybe a dry thunderstorm," and I was wrong.
Yeah, it was an icy type one with golf ball sized hail. The two things I heard about is that the hospital, a lot of vehicles in the parking lot got hit pretty hard out there, and also Holmesville, that area as it went through. So it's kind of weird how those storms pick out areas, but we went back to the end of July when we had the big windstorm. A lot of that was in the east-northeast part of the city too. Then you go back even farther to, June of a year ago, 2 years ago?
Yeah, about that.
Hailstorm that hit Wymore, that also hit kind of the eastern area. So I don't know, it's just bad luck, I guess.
It's just the way the pattern's going.
One of those things that you hope doesn't happen again, but here you are, batting 3 for 3 on that. That's
we are.
Not a good average there.
That's why we thank the good Lord for today.
Yeah, really. A little bit of sun and no rain for the moment, yeah. Yesterday, Beatrice Board of Public Works met, did kind of a brief overview of the new biennial budgets for all utility departments. Your thoughts about how things are going there?
You know what? I think as you look at the budget process, I think it's been, I think they've done a remarkable job, as they always do. Mm-hmm. I think the department heads took a look at what their needs are more than what their wants are, because there's both of those. Mm-hmm. I think Hannah challenged them to look at capital projects that go out about 8 years. And, I've said it before, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And I think with Hannah and the department heads working together to come out with what they really perceive more than just 24 and 25, it helps us take a look at how do we plan to meet those expectations, because we want to make sure when you've got the electric company, the streets, and WPC and water, you really want to make sure that we are in the right place so those all get to people's services. And that takes maintenance and updates and repairs and replacement.
When you talk that many years into the future, it can get kind of daunting because you see a lot of big projects out there, and the first thought that kind of enters your mind, how are we going to pay for all these? But I guess if you plan them out over, as you mentioned, many, many years, it may be a little easier to bite off.
There's a couple of things that you have, and this is typically a harder concept, I know, only because, in the college when we had dormitories, we had revenue, and so we had revenue bonds, which is where you pay for those bonds rather than taxes. So when you look at the Board of Public Works, all of those are revenue-generating services for the city. And so as you look at those expenditures and you look at those capital outlays over a period of years, you ask yourself, at what point in time do you need to get it done, and can you get maybe like a 5-year revenue bond to help pay for those? And so it also depends on the climate of interest and those type of things. But without having that plan, it's really hard to be able to put a pen to paper to figure out what's the best way to do that.
It was mentioned by City Administrator Tobias Templemeyer yesterday about the potential for a revenue bond in the future. How far into the future, and what sort of the scope of that, what would that kind of be like, I guess?
As you look at it, I think we're looking at maybe in 25. It would be for, when you think about it, I think it was for a substation rebuild for the electric company. I think there was a little bit on there for WPC. As we're very happy that we have 5 more years from environmental certificates for our water treatment plant. But we also know in order to get another 5 years, there's a number of projects we have to do there, and that's not cheap. Those are pretty expensive. And then I think there was maybe a little bit for streets, maybe.
Possibly,
trying to remember.
yeah.
Trying to remember. There was three, but the major outlay was for the electric department as you rebuild substations.
And I think there was I don't know if it was included in that. It might have been a water main project, that loop along 33rd
Right.
Street.
That's what it was.
Major
Yep.
thing in there.
Yep.
One thing that was mentioned in this, you see this really has come into play in the wastewater department, is use of, and I don't remember the year it was enacted, but there was a user fee that was enacted as part of the bill to help build up kind of a reserve. That's kind of made that a little easier to take in terms of the major improvements, because you had that pool of funds there that you could do this.
It has. I mean, in the long run, it's really helped the city, and it's really helped the constituents of the city. Instead of raising rates, we had kind of a flat rate there for that user fee. And at the end of the day, that's been something we've used very prudently to continue to upgrade areas that need to be upgraded without having to look at any type of rate raise.
Yeah. And that was mentioned yesterday, no rate increases for the next 2 years. It's amazing how many years that's been going on now. You ever think that, hey, one of these years that's going to have to end because you might just bump up against things that are maybe too much to handle with just user fees or the regular revenue that comes in on utility bills?
Well, that's certainly one of the things you have to think about. And I think, the hard part of it is do you just start taking small incremental bumps, or do you take, maybe a little bigger bump when you need to? I think being able to hold it again for 24 and 25 is a great spot, because I think as we look at the economy and we look at inflation, and we're affected, the city's affected by inflation as well. When you think about having, all the things we have to, you saw it, I think yesterday on the list, there was somebody who wanted a vac truck and needed the vac truck, and it's like $500,000.
Yeah.
3 years ago, it may not have been that much. So I think, though, that as we go through this inflationary times, what we can do, and if we can make things get through without raising the rates for 24 and 25, I think that helps all of us.
Yesterday, I think it was Electric Superintendent Pat Feist. He was talking about the number of bucket trucks they have, and then these digger derrick trucks. And I think he quoted some figure that the cost of those in the last 2 years has gone up 40% or something like that. I forget what the exact figure was.
Right.
And then you had the supply issues where, a lot of entities are trying to get these, and you have to wait so long to get them that by the time you can get one ordered and delivered, it's probably gone up even more in price.
That is really an issue that we're still battling. I mean, I think sometimes when you put that, bucket truck on that list and you're hoping it comes in 24, but it doesn't come in until 26, it kind of does. Number one, the money's there because we kind of earmark it and put it in our cash reserve. But number two, then it makes it look like your cash reserve is a lot higher than what it really will be, because that truck is still, money's still coming out. So from a budgetary standpoint, that is really one of those things that's really hard to keep track of, and you really need to pay attention, because if you think you've got more cash reserves than what you really have, at the end of the day, that's not a good thing when all the bills come in.
Yeah. Street department, seems like there's some big decisions to be made. Of course, you talked about the court corridor recently,
right,
and the concept of that, which has been advanced by the city council, not a specific plan, but the concept of it. Then you have the Lincoln corridor, then you have the area out by the elementary school. What do you do with, 25th to about Christ Community Church? And then you have the 33rd and Lincoln thing, the arrangement there to move traffic through there. You got some big decisions coming up.
We do, and really trying to manage your streets, because it's important to, have good traffic flow. It could be a nightmare if you don't. And then we just found out, too, in 2028, which sounds like a long ways away, but it's not, we have, Highway 77 will be redone, and they basically redo it and then hand us a bill for our portion, which is going to be about $860,000 or $900,000. And so that's kind of one of those things that they just come in, they do it and say, here you go, here's your part. So we also have to figure out how to factor that in the street plan as well.
I can't remember if you were on the council then when it happened, but didn't that same thing happen about a few years back when they resurfaced part in the northern part of the community, and you thought you were going to get a bill of similar size, and ended up that never was assessed to the city? Is that possible in this case? I can't remember if you were on the council at that time or not.
I'm not sure,
Okay.
but that would be very nice.
Yeah. Well, I seem to remember there was some figure quoted that here was going to be the city's share of that project because it happened either within corporate limits or in the 2-mile zoning.
Right.
And then it didn't come about, and it was paid for through the state. So.
Right. Well, we would gladly accept that. The scary part on this one is when they, I think in that time they didn't give us much notice, and they said, boom, here we go.
Yeah.
Where they've come out and said this is going to happen in 2028, I would imagine in the ledger column there probably is a Beatrice owes us X, but maybe, who knows?
Then you also have, I think earlier than that, part of 136.
Yes.
East Beatrice is going to be resurfaced.
I believe so, too.
That's entirely state that you know of at this point? Or?
Well, there'll be some curb and gutter and some things that we'll have to do ourselves. But, that goes from, I want to say, 10th Street out to I'm not sure where.
Okay.
But, that'll be coming, I think, this next fall.
Okay. I was thinking to at least 19th. Maybe it's farther.
It might be.
So, okay. Back with more with Mayor Bob Morgan on Ask the Mayor in just a moment. We're back on Ask the Mayor with Mayor Bob Morgan today. Kind of an update on the Court Street water main project. I know part of the discussion yesterday at the Public Works Board meeting was, how do you kind of keep away from the downtown area? You get into the holiday season, and not disrupt traffic as much as you can. And so that might be some of the reason why there's sort of a jumping around or taking some sections maybe a little bit out of order.
Right. And we've done this twice now. When you think about it, we knew that, we had to make sure we protected June for Homestead Days downtown. And then as they're working their way back in, you look at the calendar and you start counting days that could impact the downtown. You discover that, due to some supply issues, they're a little bit behind. And so we've worked with Meyer again to move. Once we get through, I think down to 9th Street. I think they're doing 2-block sections, so they're going down 11th to 9th. They will be flipping and coming back to 4th Street and then working back the other way. And what we want to make sure they do is get done, before Thanksgiving and before the Christmas season for all the businesses that are downtown.
Still the goal to have everything kind of wrapped up right by Thanksgiving or mid-November, or would it take a little longer than that?
Well, we hope it's done, but we also realize that as we move into downtown, it's a little different than the residential neighborhoods because there's going to be a lot of water taps that we have to work with the business owners. And so we just don't know how long that's going to take, but it is going to have an impact on their schedule with the number of taps that you have in in a concentrated business district.
One good thing about it, as I worked kind of east of the downtown there, we've seen traffic cones and lane arrangements a little bit different, but it seems like the public's adapted pretty well to it.
Right, and we'll probably see some closures as we do the downtown because we got to give them plenty of room to work and make things safe. So I know that they're working with Olson's on a traffic plan that we will have as they come into the downtown.
I see. Not too far back, you announced appointment of 3 committees, special committees, to kind of work on major issues such as Dempster, downtown development, kind of ordinance revisions as they come up. I know you've gotten initial reports from them recently, but any further updates on the work they're doing there?
Just to give you probably quick updates, downtown redevelopment, they continue to look at the downtown revitalization plans. Dempster's, that committee actually went up and met with the environmental folks of the state, and they're trying to, again, put together a playbook because there's a lot of roadblocks there. But what can we take down now? What can we not take down? And how do we do it in a planned way? And I think Ted's done a good job of getting some things together on that one. And then as far as ordinance reviews, Gary's in charge of that one, and we're taking a look again at the ordinance for nuisance properties. But we're also taking a look at some of the stuff that's been on the books forever. Occupation tax. I mean, back in the day, there was a tax on, well, one that sticks into my mind is if you have a bowling alley, there's like a $10 tax on each lane or something that was put in place in the early 70s, and there's some other ones that are just off the wall that you don't see. And so,
you ever wonder about the motivation when people came up with these things?
Yeah, who knows? So we're slowly working through ordinances, and we're trying to take some of those that just don't make sense today off the books. Probably we'll do some ordinance revisions where we see necessary, but gosh, if you think about the fact that we've added ordinances, but we haven't taken a look at some of the ones that were probably necessary maybe back in the 70s that aren't necessary today, we're going to have to take a strong look, and it's just going to take time. Yeah. So we just do it kind of one ordinance at a time.
The Court Street Corridor project, of course, we talked about that before the break. How much maybe is a focus shifting a little bit more short-term to the Ella Street thing, because I know that's what the committee was dealing with, too, and you have plans to use the downtown redevelopment grant to sort of take a look at that area, too. Right.
That's probably where they're starting. They'll move to that. I think the downtown committee actually has done a couple of things. They're going to need to look at that $400,000 and how do we best use that. But they're also trying to work with some RFQs that we have from developers for Kensington, because Kensington's sitting there, and we know that it needs to be done. But again, it's another one of those things that it takes some money.
Yeah. Since the council took the vote on the concept moving forward, not specific plan,
right,
but the concept for the corridor, do you continue to get feedback personally about what's needed there, about the wish to want to move the highway, the heavy truck traffic farther south? Anybody come up with something that might be a good alternative, maybe a less costly way of doing things?
Well, there's a lot of things to look at there, and I will stress that it is a concept. I think when you call it a master plan, you think that's the final plan, but that's really the concept plan. Now we have to figure out, as you start putting details together, then you start asking, businesses that might be impacted. You start asking some other people some opinions, and I know that it's, I think it's going to be a while because I don't see how we can do that without federal funding. Having federal funding means going through a couple of opportunities that you'll have for community input again, and so that's good.
And this is just an if the highway relocation thing, for whatever reason, did not go forward, whether it was cost or it just ended up being not feasible to do that, what effect would that have on kind of the rest of the corridor as far as what you could do maybe as a substitute that would accomplish some of the same things, but without, getting that truck traffic from moving right through the downtown area?
Well, that's a really good question that we'd probably have to look at again. I think one of the things that we know is that, the signage, actually, we did investigate that because one of the comments was we need better signage for the truck route. Well, that unfortunately isn't in the hands of the Beatrice City. That's in the hands of Nebraska Department of Transportation. So, if they see fit to put better signage up there, we can do that and see how that works. When you look at the overall corridor plan, it really was to develop, a pedestrian-friendly walking area and better parking. And so I don't know. I think it's just have to relook and see how we can still accomplish some of those goals, but I think it would be very difficult.
Since everybody always gets so upset when you mention roundabouts, I was thinking the other day, is there a way to do that and it sort of informally encourage truck drivers, no, I don't want to go right through the downtown. I want to take the truck route without actually having to do a roundabout. And I have no idea, but the thought came to mind. Engineers come up with ways to move traffic all the time, move them more safely or quickly. Is there another alternative to that, I guess? I don't know.
Well, there's also what they call a reverse S curve, and a roundabout. But if you're moving that might help. But you got to remember that takes up, again, some money to make that S curve take, and it takes up more land than what a roundabout does. So then you still have the right-of-way issues. You still have some of the issues that people down there might be affected.
Business access and things like that.
Right. So you still, I guess that's why I'm glad I'm not an engineer, but I really want to rely on their expertise. So, at the end of the day, I think if we can't afford it, or B, we can't get federal funding to do it, I think it will be one of those difficult discussions of what can we do then.
Okay. Back to wrap up Ask the Mayor with Mayor Bob Morgan in just a moment. Back to wrap up Ask the Mayor today with Beatrice Mayor Bob Morgan. New school year started. Got to feel a little bit strange to you. You'd be, if you were not retired, you'd be all ready for that new college year and everything, and getting set for that. But it's always kind of a time of year we like to remind people, you around school buildings and things, kind of take it easy. Don't drive at some excessive speed. Right. There's a lot of kids out. So
there's a lot of kids. Time to really pay attention. Kind of get the summer off, but there'll be a number of crosswalks where kids are walking to school. Things have geared up. It seems like it's getting earlier and earlier when people start, and unfortunately, I thought about it. When they started last week for their first day, and then the first full week this week, they've had really good weather.
Yeah.
And so you always worry about how hot does it get in the school for the kids, and then you look at next week, and so that's too bad that they're going to be there with 105 degrees. But slow down, watch for kids. Yeah. School buses as well. Those things are all going to be out. I know that even like now, I left 2 minutes earlier than I usually do to come here, because otherwise I get behind a school bus, and when the stop sign's out, make sure you stop.
It's either that or it's a train backing across Court Street sometime. You always got to watch out for that.
Those days I might have to call you.
Yeah, that's all right. That's happened before. I know Stan had that a couple of times where he's kind of waiting in line there. So, the other thing, too, the 2 school resource officers are back at their duties. I know in the off-season they go back on patrol duties, but now they're back in the middle school and high school. That's been a good program.
That's been an excellent program. It's one that I think has paid us dividends in not only, making sure things are running smoothly and keeping our schools safe, but it really has been a great link to see how police officers can just interact with the regular students, and how that has just worked. It's just been an excellent program.
Helps students see police in a different vein. It's not about just arresting people or going to accidents and things like that. It's about working in the community.
Working and sometimes it's a sounding board. Sometimes it's somebody who just has something they want to talk about, and our resource officers are very good to sit there and listen.
Okay. Work session coming up prior to the council meeting next Monday. Is that right?
That's right. August 21st, our work session's from 6 to 7, and then the city council's from 7.
Not the fireworks that we usually see from people upset about something, but actual fireworks and the changes you made with the regulations.
Right. I mean, we changed the ordinance. We did have some feedback, both pro and con, and I think when you do change an ordinance, it's kind of nice to have a review, and that's what that process is going to be. I think there'll be, a chance for the city council to visit about, A, when you have sales, and B, how long can you shoot the fireworks off? I think those are the 2 feedbacks that we've gotten, both pro and con, and so it's a good time to sit and listen and see if there's some adjustments that we need to make.
Any guess about what will draw the most discussion? Would it be the cutoff time, curfew, or not necessarily?
I think so. Yeah. I think the feedback that I think I've gotten, and a lot of city councilmen have gotten, is that by the time midnight on the 4th rolls around, that's probably long enough, and adding the 5th was where I've heard most of the feedback from the negative side. Haven't heard any feedback about early sales. Mainly I've heard that there comes a point in time when enough's enough.
Yeah. The cutoff time at night, would it help to maybe standardize that a little bit more rather than, because it seemed like there was discussion about, is it 10 p.m., is it 11, is it midnight, and what day it's on, that type of thing.
I mean, I think that's something that probably will come up and discussed. So we'll see where we end up.
Be interested to see, and I hope, I don't know if anybody will offer it, but it would be interesting to see what the sales or gross figures were on some of the stands, because
certainly
that would be a major factor in whether or not to continue this.
Right, and that's the other thing that we always have to remember is that most of the fireworks stands that we have in town are really run by organizations that are raising money for their organization. Yeah. So it's not somebody's coming into town, taking money and running back out.
True. Bob, we'll see you Monday night.
All right, thank you.